It looks like I'm live. Yay. Yay. I'm having a day, friends. I'm having a day. Oh, look, I'm live on Instagram too. I'm just having a day where it just feels like, you know, everything is, nothing's easy and everything is like hard, which is nothing's easy, everything's hard. Oh, hi, Sarah. I love your face. I miss your face. Yep, it's a day. It is a day today. It's so much of a day today that I actually have a filter on over on Instagram because I just need that filter on. Yeah, no, I don't actually look quite this shiny in real life. Y'all, what a day. I'm literally holding my phone right now. Ugh. Oh, Sarah! Oh, and Piano Voice on Instagram is saying, a day? Talk about a week. I feel it. I feel it too. It's been a week. It's been a week. I set up like whole thing to have like a whole event today and like be here at noon and do all the things, noon my time, of course, and do all the things. Like I had the event like even set up in Facebook and the whole thing. Like I had all my reminders. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. That did not work. No, it did not. So here we are. And then I changed all the reminders to 1 o'clock and then Facebook, I don't even know. I don't know. Someday I should really figure out what's going on with Facebook, eh? Today's not that day, friends. Today is not that day. So, here we go. I have some notes. Let's talk. Let's talk. If you're having a bit of a day, well, what can I say? Maybe like get some chocolate in your life. Maybe do that. That's going to be my next step. And also, I just realized like right now, I haven't had a coffee, latte, nothing, no caffeine yet today. That could be the thing. Is it 1 o'clock? Right? I haven't had any caffeine yet today, which I kind of totally need normally. But I'm actually a little bit like, I did go for a walk this morning, so that's good. Went out there and marched around a little bit. And it's beautiful out there. It's beautiful. Anyway, ended up doing some things that I didn't expect to have to do. And here we are. And I had to close my window because they're doing construction. So I couldn't like leave my window open and keep the nice breeze going while I'm going live. No, couldn't do that, right? Because then the noise would be coming through. Yes, no caffeine is probably the problem. But you know I don't have caffeine because like no and all the people in my house didn't like. Oh, good. Everybody else in my house needs to get their act together. That's all I'm saying. Everybody else. Okay, my friends, I'm not here to like ram. Maybe a little bit, but hardly any. What do I want to talk about today? Yes, these are live office hours. These are live office hours. With me, Dr. Shannon Coates. Hi. Here's what I want to talk about a little bit about today. Anissa feels me too. Yay, thank you. Not alone. Not alone. Here's what I wanted to talk about today. I want to talk a little bit about first, then directives. And I wanted to talk a little bit about reward charts. So really what we're talking about when we talk about those two concepts, and I'll get into what those are in just a minute, but when we're talking about what those concepts are, also, can you hear my dryer like banging around in the background? Probably should have stopped that. I did remember to unplug the phone, so we won't be interrupted should the phone ring. Hopefully the banging of the dryer in the background is not too much of a distraction. Hopefully. No, you can't? Oh, excellent. So glad to hear that. Okay. So we're talking about, not really. Laura's a little more honest. Not really. Maybe a little banging. Just a little. It's fine. It's fine. Oh, no dryer sound. Okay, good. Phew. All right. Here we go. So we're talking about first, then directives as well as reward charts. So these are both ways that we work to, in therapy, oh, you can hear an orange dryer in the background. That's amazing. So Solidarity, friends, solidarity. Here we are on a Friday, and it's like your Friday evening, my Friday afternoon. What are we doing? Laundry. Amazing, amazing. So these are ways that we use to, in ABA therapy, which we'll talk about in a minute, these are things that we use to have compliance. So these are compliance factors and ways that we use to change behavior. So these are ways that we're asking for compliance from children usually, almost always. And then we're enforcing these things, or we're bringing these things in. You can see from my language that I'm not a big fan, right? I'm like enforcing, blah, blah. Ways that we bring these in to help to change behavior. So I didn't realize, first of all, I didn't realize that the first then modality, I didn't realize that this was actually a formalized concept. I didn't realize that until about maybe a year and a half ago, a little while ago, excuse me, when I started to see it kind of popping up, this idea of first then modality or first then directive. When I started to see it popping up in, for example, in adult autistic communities where people were saying, this is not a good way to change behavior, especially considering when you think whose definition of good behavior are we talking about? So what first then is, and I didn't know literally until this morning when I was doing a little bit of research on this topic to make sure that I wasn't just talking on my ass, I did a little bit of research, and I didn't realize literally until this morning that this is actually called, that is a formal strategy that's called the PREMAC principle or PREMAC principle. I'm not really sure how to say that. Obviously, I just learned it this morning. So I didn't realize that it was like a formal concept. So here's what it is. The first then strategy is in order to, and it's literally like in the literature, if you look up, especially in ABA therapy, so I also wrote down, applied behavior analysis therapy, so the therapy that comes out of applied behavioral analysis. So ABA therapy, if you look this up, this is the kind of definition. So I'm going to read to you from a source here that is like an ABA source. So I maybe should have put a trigger warning on there for some folks around ABA. So I apologize if this is nasty for you. You might want to skip this one or skip maybe 5 minutes ahead if you're listening not live. So teaching compliance with first then or the PREMAC principle. So one of the most important first steps that a child needs to make in ABA therapy is learning the concept of first then, which is first I do something, fill in the demand here, then I get something, fill in the reward here. So basically this means that if I only get an ice cream, and this is from this copy here, if I only get an ice cream when I finish writing a behavior plan, or when I do something, if I reward myself with something specific every time I do something I don't want to do, it increases the likelihood of me doing the thing that I don't want to do because I know that I'm going to get a reward at the end. So that's very interesting. That's very okay. That's a kind of, we as adults, we kind of put that shenanigans on ourselves. We say okay, well, if I run this morning, then I can have a chocolate bar this afternoon. And that is not awesome, but we're not here to talk about what we do to ourselves as adults. So if that's something that is in your mindset, that may be something to consider, exploring, that sort of first then kind of thing, where you're rewarding yourself in a specific way, like in a sort of fear or guilt based way for something that is, to do something that you don't want to do or that you should do, you feel support, blah, blah, blah. There are ways as an adult to do this in a relatively healthy way, to have this as a relatively healthy, but again, you explore for yourself as an adult, okay? That's something you can explore for yourself. But in a therapy way, so I'm not here to talk about whether ABA therapy is, good or bad. There is, if you are interested in ABA therapy, or if you've had ABA therapy, or you're interested in it for your child, I would highly recommend that you do some research on that and just talk to some actually autistic adults, especially autistic adults who have had experiences with ABA therapy. So just highly recommend that you just kind of take a look at it. So one of the things that is challenging and not useful about this first then, and first then is really associated with ABA therapy, right? So first then directives, very highly associated with ABA therapy. ABA therapy aims to change behavior through compliance. So it aims to change the way we behave by inserting several different ways of making the person whose behavior we want to change more compliant so that they do the thing we want them to do. As I said before, this gets problematic because by whose standard are we judging what is good and what is bad behavior, and what behavior needs to be changed and what behavior does not need to be changed? And also, how are we assessing whether the behavior is, whether someone is complying, there's a power dynamic here, right? So the folks who are super into first then and ABA therapy as well will say well, this is all about compliance. This isn't obedience, right? This is where I'm teaching the child, I'm showing the child how they should behave, and I'm doing it by, this reward system, or maybe I'm using charts or something like that. I'm doing this by a reward system so that I'm showing them how they behave. And because I have a relationship with them, it's not an obedience thing, right? It's not a power thing. But the line is very unclear about that, and many people have been harmed by this because the line is not clear. So what I want to do today is to talk a little bit more about this compliance versus obedience versus a concept called consideration versus motivation. So obedience, compliance, consideration, motivation. So we're kind of going to get a bunch of these things going together. So as a parent, we are doing a different thing with our children. I'm not talking about parenting here today. As a parent, we're doing a different thing with our children than we are doing in the studio as an educator. And unfortunately, so often what we've done is we've taken some of the principles, faulty or not, we've taken some of the principles from our parenting, from society, how blah, 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 and we've brought them into the studio. And in some cases from education as well. The first then directives are commonly taught in education as well. So in some cases we take these out of education and we sort of take them on, and we don't consider what the deeper implication is of this if-then directive, or of something like a reward chart. And we think to ourselves that we are in almost a parental role with our students. And again, I'm not really here to discuss what parental roles should be or should not be. That's a whole other thing, whole other thing. But we start to, in the negative sense, we start to think of ourselves in a parental role of the student in a negative sense, where we start to think of ourselves as having, as having the information. This is a little bit of that sort of God mentality, and sort of that teacher is high and student is low mentality. Teacher knows all the things, students know none of the things mentality. So this kind of sneaks in where we say, I know what the appropriate behavior is here. I know what the appropriate repertoire is. I know what the appropriate sound is. I know how you should be practicing. I know what you should be doing with your body. I know how you should be breathing. All of those things, we start to get this mentality around, I know all of these things that are the best for you, and it goes dark real quick, right? It goes dark real quick, that mentality. And so we think of all of those things. And then because we're kind of coming out of this mentality of like, I know all the things, we start to look for compliance in the student. And we would never say that we're looking for obedience, right? We're never saying, oh, I want obedience in the student. No, we would never say that, although we might a little bit. We might think it somewhere in our heads, and we might also think that from our parenting and all that kind of thing, like, but obedience in the negative sense, where the first then is like, if you do this thing, then I will reward you with this thing that you like. And the thing that you don't want to do is the thing that I think is important for you to do. So we'll get to some examples in a minute. So we kind of sneak down from obedience to compliance, and we kind of start to say, okay, so we need the student to be compliant. We need them to practice regularly. We need them to do this, 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 and this, right? It goes dark so fast, right? Like this is what they should do. It goes really dark. And then we start to implement these things for the best, because we know what's best for the students. So we start to implement these things in our studio. So like I said, we start to implement things like first then directives. We start to implement things like reward charts. If the compliance factor, or even obedience, if obedience or wanting students to be obedient is kind of like sneaking into the back of your brain, consider switching from obedience to compliance down to consideration. So rather than obedience is I want the student to do the thing because I said so. I have tried really hard to not have that line in my parenting. Every once in a while it does sneak in, but I've really tried not to have because I said so in my parenting. And really, truly not in my studio at all. I think I might have said that once at the end of my rope of frustration where I was just at the end. But really trying very hard not to have because I said so in my studio, which is obedience. Compliance, if you're hearing or feeling that you've got some compliance going on in there, and if you've got compliance, you may be doing things like, if you sing this song you don't like, but that I think is good for you, you can sing this song you do like, and that I don't think is as good for you. Right? So, and of course that's quite black and white. We have lots of reasons for thinking that a song is good for a student. Lots of reasons. There may be very sound pedagogical reasons why a student should maybe sing a song. There may also be there are lots of reasons why we might think that a student should sing a particular song. But if that is coming into your mind where you're saying, okay, if you practice 20 minutes every day and you fill in your sheet, I will give you, I don't know, we'll have a whole lesson where you just get to sing all the songs you like. Or I will give you candy, or I will give you stickers, or I will, whatever it is. Don't get me wrong, I understand the place of reward charts, and we'll get to those in a minute. But if you've got a first then, or you've got a reward chart kind of thing going on, you may be in a compliance mentality. You may be in that compliance mentality. So what I'm encouraging you to think about is moving from the compliance mentality down or up into consideration mentality and then motivation. So consideration mentality is a little bit more along these lines. I'm going to explain to you, not in a like, I know what's best and you don't know way, but I'm going to explain to you what my reasoning for choosing this repertoire. Here are the reasons, and here are the reasons I think you might grow to like it, and I would love for you to try it. And if you hate it right off the bat, no problem. I'm a really good teacher and I have resources. I can find other repertoire that's going to accomplish the same pedagogical, that's going to do the same thing that this song is going to do, except that they're going to like. I know this about myself. I know this about every single one of you out there. You have resources to find the songs that your students are going to like. You can start to have a this change whereby the students are where we're starting to motivate students, not because of something that's good for them or something that we like are imposing on them, but because, and then the explanation from before that I was talking about in terms of the consideration model is that once we start to understand, as I've talked about before, we start to understand what the student's why is, we also then can weave that into the consideration model for example, repertoire, right? So if a student's why is to audition for a specific thing, and maybe their deeper why is to be able to have a voice, to be heard more, to be able to be seen better, like because they can use their voice in a specific way, so they can be seen more, they can show up in a different way in the world. Like there's so many different whys. So once we know their why, you can weave that why into your explanations for how you might want to consider practicing, how you might want to consider learning, how you might want to consider breathing, how you might want to consider what's good for your body in this specific pitch range, what your options are in this pitch range for your body, if you can start to weave in the why as well as your pedagogical considerations, that starts to move from compliance, which is I know all the things and I'm going to help you to discover it by like giving you this, and then you're going to be so happy because you actually did this thing and you get the reward. Doesn't work that way, by the way, but anyway, then I'm going to move you, you're going to be able to move over into the consideration part. So that consideration part then takes into account what the student's why is, and then that gets you down into motivation. So once you have this once you have this insight into what the student's why is and what they're and you're starting to work on this consideration model where it's more of a dialogue and where you're figuring out where you're weaving what they want and their why into the a practicing model, for example, or into some kind of into a learning belt, for example, or learning a scale, learning solfege, learning sight reading. I mean, you know that I don't think that everybody needs to learn how to sight read, but if that's part of something that is going to be useful for them later on as part of what they want to do as a musician, then you can start to weave that into the learning process, right? The why gets weaved into the learning process, and then the motivation kicks in. So here are a couple of, oh, thanks, Chris. Yes. So here are a couple of reasons that the first then directive and the reward charts don't work. A couple of reasons they don't work, and then a couple of I'll throw in a couple of ideas in terms of how to motivate and ways to reconsider like things like practicing, for example, and motivation in that way. So one of the reasons that the first then doesn't work, and especially doesn't work with neurodivergent folks, friends, I cannot even tell you. Oh, thank you, Chris. You're welcome. I cannot tell you how not successful, and in many, many cases, how incredibly harmful the sort of first then concept and the reward charts are so often especially for neurodivergent folks, so often. Reward charts reward the folks who are already motivated to do something. That's who they reward. So if you have students who are likely going to be practicing because they're already motivated, and or they have parents who are supportive and who are able to teach them how to practice and work with them in how to practice, or you have adults who are already motivated or who have that internal motivation or who are internally motivated people, Or you have you're working with students who already have who already deeply understand their why, and who already have a very they've done the work to understand what motivates themselves and how they are able to how to do the things, how to get the things that they want to get, and how to get to the places that they want to get, and they understand how their brains work, and they understand how to internally motivated, but also they've done some work, and so they put systems in place in order to do what they want to do. So if you're working with those students are the ones who are going to get the rewards every single time. They're going to fill in the practice chart because they're already doing it anyway. Look, as an adult, it is very useful to keep notes of your practicing. That is very useful, and it may be useful. It's useful for all students to keep notes. That is very well documented in this kind of research. Very well documented. It's useful to keep notes, and it's useful to keep like a practice chart for yourself. But it's how you do that and how you're motivated. So if you are motivated because you want to get the prize, because you want to get your favorite toy, or you want to get like the candy, that is not internal motivation, and that is not going to last. And for folks who are neurodivergent, it is can be so anxiety producing. It just is overwhelmingly anxiety producing, because, okay, I'm paraphrasing some adult autistic experiences here. I'm paraphrasing that, and I am also drawing on the experiences of my children. So I'll just say that I'm not speaking for all autistic folks here. Certainly experiences differ. But speaking on behalf of what I know from my children and from other adult autistic folks, especially, or folks who have executive function differences, where task initiation is problematic, where time permanence is problematic, like some of these other things where motivation may be there, but the systems are not yet in place to actually create the outcome that you're asking for on your practice sheet or on your reward chart. This is incredibly challenging for folks, because I look at that reward chart and I think, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do it. I might be able to do one or two of these. I'm not going to be able to do it, but I do really, really want that reward, because I work toward having a reward. So I really do want to have that reward, but I'm never going to be able to do it. It is so anxiety producing. And there's a little bit of discussion around, should we get into that? No, let's not get into that right now. No, let's not get into that. So reward charts reward the folks who are going to practice anyway, who are internally motivated to do this practicing in the way that you think. So a way that you can have, and I'll say the first then as well. First then, where I say, you sing this song that you don't like, for example, and then you get to sing the song that you do like. Sorry, my hair's gone crazy. If you sing this song that you don't like, but that I think is good for you, then you get to sing the song that you do like, but that I don't necessarily think is as good for you. This is problematic and challenging, because what are we doing? We are telling the student that they don't have agency in the relationship, and that they don't have agency over their voice. We are telling them that they implicitly, of course, we're not explicitly saying that, we're telling them that I know what is better for you than you know. So do we want to introduce students to new repertoire that they may not like at first glance? Of course we do. Do we want to broaden horizons, and do we want to introduce repertoire that they may not like at first glance? Of course we do. Do we want to introduce technical skills and technical work that may not be fun to do at first glance? Of course we do. Do we want to encourage agility and coordination in specific ways, using exercises that we may not like at the beginning? Of course. This is not what I'm talking about. I am talking about ignoring the student's agency in the situation because I think, as the teacher, that I know better. So not listening to what the student is actually saying when they say, I don't like this piece of music. if they don't like this piece of music, or if they hate this exercise, or they blah, 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 whatever the thing is that they are not doing that you think they should be, or that they do not like but that you think they should, forcing them to do the thing without having a conversation, and without tying that thing, and without listening to them, and in order for them to be able to do the thing they like, that is obedience training. That's not teaching, my friends. That's obedience training. That's what we do with pets. Not with cats, because cats don't listen. But with dogs, this is what we do. This is obedience training. And we couch it and we say it's compliance, but it gets real dark real fast in the voice studio, right? It can get so dark so fast. So we start to think toward, rather than compliance, and rather than like, I know all the things, and I have a good reason for this, and so you need to listen to me. Rather than having that, we start to move toward consideration, and then we start to move toward motivation. So some other ways of working toward motivation, some other thoughts around how do we, when we know the student's why, and we know that we know that something in particular, so say the student wants to sing music theater. They love music theater. They say they love all the belty roles. But say they can only do the full-on belt, or like a head voice sound. Say they can't get that mix. Say we're working on the mix, and say they hate all of the exercises because it feels very awkward, and they don't like the mix. They don't like learning the mix. It feels awkward. It always feels wrong. It never feels like I'm never gonna learn this, all of those things. Say there's this real resistance to any of the exercises you introduce around mix. What do we start to do in there? Rather than saying, okay, if you will do this exercise 3 times, then I'll let you belt. What does that do? That says their feeling around all of their uncomfortableness, and all of their feeling, and all of their trauma, or whatever it is that's bringing up in them when they're trying to do these exercises, is not valid. You got to push through. You got to, you're being too sensitive. You just do what I say and it's going to be fine, right? That is not what we want in our contemporary studios, friends. That is the old way. You don't have to teach that way. You just don't. So what do we do instead? We start to find ways, again, I know that this student wants to, for example, in this example, I know this student wants to sing specific songs, and those songs require that kind of tonal outcome, that kind of tonal that kind of production, right? So I know the student wants this. So we have a conversation around it, first of all, right? We have a conversation around, let's listen to some of these, and so I'm drawing on their why, and I'm also going to bring in one other thing here. So I'm drawing on their why. You love this music, you love this specific artist, you love how this artist sounds, you love what they do, you love the tone quality here. Let's listen to a bunch of them. You tell me what you love about them. Terrific. In order to get to there, we're going to have some uncomfortable times on the way there. And some of those uncomfortableness, I'm going to be here for you. When it's so uncomfortable that you can't stand it, we're not going to do it. We're going to go do something else super fun. I'm going to be here. We're going to figure some stuff out. And then maybe we find so that's their why for being here in the music studio. And then maybe we find, what is your obsession? What is the thing that you love to do? Maybe I was talking to Nikki Loney the other day for one of her podcasts, and I brought up, baseball, because her kid is obsessed with baseball. So maybe baseball is your full-on passion, or maybe fine art is your passion, or maybe a TV show like JoJo, or that's an animation, like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I don't know how I pulled that out of my head, seeing as my kids are obsessed. Or maybe just animation in general is your obsession, or maybe you're obsessed with, Hamilton. Maybe you're obsessed with the show. Find the thing that is super like my favorite thing. And we're not going to do a first then, we're not going to do a reward chart. We are not going to do like, oh, if you practice this thing 3 times in a row and you get it, then we're going to, I'm going to take you to see Hamilton. Nope, that's not the thing. That's not the thing. That's too much pressure, too much anxiety, too much forcing to do a thing when it's really uncomfortable, right? That's not the thing. So we take that thing, and maybe it's Hamilton, maybe it's baseball, maybe it's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and we start to work from, hey, a character in this show sings like this. What does it sound like when you do this exercise as that character? Or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. How would so-and-so from that show sing this exercise? How would they do this exercise? What actions would they have? What would they look like? How can you, so you as the teacher are going to kind of weave together not only the student's why, so that you are not only the student's why, so that you are working toward what's it called? Not compliance, it's the other C word. Consideration. So you're moving toward consideration. I'm just looking at my notes. So where can you find, so that you're moving toward consideration? And then what can you find that's going to motivate them, right? So the consideration part, where we're both talking about it and we're acknowledging your why, and these are the steps and these are the things we need to get there. And now what's your motivation? What motivates you? Like, what do you love? How can we incorporate what you really, really love into whatever we're doing? So say it's a practice routine. I mean, something that has been incredibly useful in the cohorts, or something that I have run with singers in the cohorts, is setting up just practice times together. And now these are adults, so this is a little bit different, but it could happen with young students too. You can set up like a practice on Zoom. Everybody gets together and practices, and it's not a reward system. It's a way to motivate, because I love to be with other people. Get all the extroverts together to practice together, right? This is the problem with being a singer or a pianist. If you're a pianist and you're an extrovert, it's really challenging, because piano requires a lot of alone time in a practice room, right? I could never be a pianist. It was way too much. Singing requires more alone time in a practice room than I would like, right? So this is one way you can actually get together and practice together. I do this all the time when I'm working. I don't like working by myself. I'm not like super motivated to work by myself. So like, what do? I have co-working. I'm like, I text a bunch of friends. I'm like, let's get on Zoom and we'll work together. And we just have each other on the cameras, and that motivates me. It helps me to keep working, right? So that was a little bit of a tangent. You're welcome. Okay. So what are we doing? We're moving from the idea of compliance, of how do I get the student to do something? How do I get the student? How do I kind of trick them into changing their behavior? And then we're moving into consideration, which is how do I work with the student to, to unearth their why and to show them how this can all meld together and how this is connected into what we're doing in the lesson. And that consideration also involves listening to the student and validating when the student is saying that something is uncomfortable, something I don't like doing something, and then listening to why, figuring that out and putting the why in as well. And then moving right into that motivation as well. So finding the motivation to from perhaps an external source, right? So that motivation, like I said, like tapping into whatever their super duper love is. If their super duper love is baseball, I think one of the examples we used on the podcast episode was like, if the super duper love is baseball, then maybe you sing the stats of your favorite baseball player in like a scale. I don't even know if that would really work, but I know that like if you're a super duper baseball fan, then you probably have stats memorized, right? So like if you've got stats memorized, then like you can like sing it in a scale. or you can sustain, or like one person's name, or something like that. Or you can have like you're gonna what does it look like to like throw a pitch? Is that you're gonna somehow get that into how they're creating sound in their body. So moving from compliance, which is what first then directives are, and what reward charts are. Remember, reward charts only work for the folks who are actually already going to do it anyway. One other thing is that with reward charts, like you can set up internal reward charts with folks, so long as they're completely in it with you, right? So long as you're saying, okay, and this is what we do as adults too, right? Like we set up our own little reward charts, not like in a positive, okay, we're not going to, okay, it's enough. Moving through those four kind of areas and seeing if you can find your way to a little bit more consideration / motivation rather than staying in the compliance and possibly obedience side of things. All right, that was okay considering I didn't have caffeine yet. That was okay. All right, friends, have a terrific rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Next weekend is the Singer Summit with the Svara Project. So if you haven't registered yet, take a look somewhere on you'll find I have an affiliate link floating around here somewhere. So feel free to use that to register. You're so welcome, Laura. I hope that was useful. If you haven't registered yet and you're interested in doing that, get in there now. I do have an affiliate link somewhere, and I am talking, you're so welcome, Dan. I'm talking about neurodivergent voice. It's a real quick, like 101, because it's only an hour long. So it's a real quick 101 in there, but there are tons and tons of other terrific oh, Dan, I go live on Mondays and Fridays. So Mondays at 9 o'clock Eastern time and Fridays usually at noon Eastern time. Didn't happen this time around, but usually like in around this time, yeah. Oh, it's so true, right, Laura? Yeah, I mean, well, so the official office hours are over now. And so let me say, my kids were not motivated by reward charts for learning like to use the potty, for example, right? I tried reward charts. It just made them cry. It made them cry. It made them so sad. Why? Because they saw what the reward was. They saw the picture of it. We were like, okay, well, we'll get you a toy. Like, we'll get you this, like, whatever it was. I can't even remember. And I think with my daughter, we tried to use like Smarties and blah, blah, blah. So like, but they were just crying because they couldn't understand. I know, right, Laura? They couldn't, it was devastating for them. They couldn't understand what was going on. Oh, horrible. I was like, I don't understand. Like, everybody says this is the way to get them to go potty. It's not working here. This isn't working. And this was, of course, like, a decade and a half ago, right? Like, my kids are 18 and 16. So, like, this is a long time ago when I was like, these things don't seem to work well. I don't know. I have, and the other, oh gosh, yeah. Anyway, and also the first then was horrible with my kids because, I would say like, okay, if you eat this, then, like if you eat your peas, then, you can have a cookie or whatever, right? My son would just be like, well, I don't want a cookie. Okay, well, okay. He's like, oh my gosh, I want the medicines reach you with stickers anyway. Right? I know. I'm like, yeah, like my son would just be like, okay, I don't want a cookie. Oh, okay. So then we're into talking about consequences, right? So we're like, okay, what's going to be healthiest for your body, and you have these foods, and we're going to have balanced meals, and this is going to be what's healthiest for your body, and you want to be to have these balanced foods. And then if you love having cookies, that's fine, like let's have like 1 or 2 of them. That's terrific. That's amazing. I mean, the first then was never worked with my own children, right? But like I said at the beginning, I didn't know that it was an actual I didn't know it was an actual like modality or an actual, what do they call it here? A formal strategy. I didn't know it was an actual strategy until about a year and a half ago. Anyway, have a good weekend. Thanks for joining me, friends. Ending video. There we go. Oh, need to